Well, it's kind of long overdue to actually get back into what I actually started this channel with. Now, I've gone pretty much on a years long tangent for fitness and everything because I've showcased all the stuff that you can use to be able to kind of improve yourself through in a sense recovery from substance abuse. Now, if you go back to a bunch of my earlier videos, I mean, back then I probably couldn't as articulate as well as I can now, and of course, it's for me being able to articulate and get my thoughts and viewpoints in order. It's always an ongoing thing. I'm sure everyone can relate to that with at least something. It's always okay, I got this weakness. I'm constantly trying to improve upon that weakness and everything. So, but I'm getting back into actually coming across approaches for substance abuse, and since I don't necessarily want to say recovery, because there gets to be a point where you're kind of or at least you should get to a point where you're no longer oh, I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for 25 years and I'm still no better than I was 25 years ago. That's not necessarily the mindset that you want to get into. So the method I'm going to talk about today actually comes across as kind of in a sense treatment as in a sense a disease. Now, when you think of diseases, name a disease that a spiritual approach, AA says that with alcoholism that they claim that if what we now know as substance abuse or alcohol abuse, and to my recollection, the DSM-6 has yet to be released. I know the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, was released back in 2012. And I'm sure, of course, recording this, it's 2025, so I'm sure that the DSM-5 has at least been updated in the past 13 years. Now, and of course, I did come across a tidbit that it's manuals come out every 10 years or so. So I don't know if the 6 came out a few years ago, or like I said, the DSM-5 has been updated in the past few years. So people can jump in the comments and actually correct me, oh, hey, look, I actually looked into this and this is where I got the information. So, and now I'm going to the method I'm going to talk about is the Sinclair method. So this is something I haven't talked about and or maybe I've probably mentioned in passing and everything. So now I've I came across Smart Recovery, which tends to treat substance abuse kind of more as a behavior, and so I'm kind of probably going to in future videos get into that and kind of how you can have maybe a disease approach and a behavior approach and kind of combine the two. But for this one, I'm going to talk about the Sinclair method, which in a sense treats substance abuse kind of as a disease. Now, and I'm going to do a comparison with AA. Now, AA states, and if you get into all the literature and everything, that it's the literature states that alcoholism is a spiritual is a disease that only a spiritual way of life can treat and everything. So that begs the question, what kind of disease demands a spiritual approach, a spiritual medical approach? So there, if you take a step back and actually look at things objectively, think of things a couple of things that come to mind is like diabetes and heart disease. If you think about it, we wouldn't necessarily treat those two diseases by going to the Catholic Church or going to a synagogue or a mosque, or oh, hey, look, if you go to your local Protestant church and you pray about it, oh, your diabetes or your heart disease is going to go away. No, you go to the hospital for your diabetes and get medication for insulin and stuff, and then you get on a program where you can actually manage in a sense the diabetes disease or whatever. And so this is where the Sinclair method comes in play. And now it uses the drug naltrexone, and so in a sense you're now you're in a sense being prescribed a drug to treat a disease and everything. So now there's the sinclairmethod.org, and so I've mentioned in previous videos, especially with my fitness ones, the kind of the hierarchy of articles and stuff that you come across in or on the internet. Like you want like the .org, .gov, .edu. So those are like at least 90 or probably 99.9% of the time, those are the most reliable ones you're going to come across. .coms, you kind of have to like step back and like, okay, and ask yourself, is this one an actual research paper or research site, or is it just more opinion based? And that's with .coms. So with this website that I took some notes on, like to kind of like touch upon, it's a .org. So it's a like the good old www.sinclairmethod.org. And so now it is evidence based, and so now like for instance, it was like founded in like I shouldn't, not founded. It was FDA approved in 1994. I'm thinking like Smart Recovery was formed in 1994, which is more like a psychological behavior approach to it and everything. So you can see like in the early mid 90s, we're starting to see more evidence-based approaches that can be used to actually treat like this like disease or behavior of alcohol and or substance abuse and everything. So it was developed by Dr. John Sinclair, so that's why it's called the Sinclair method, after Dr. John D. Sinclair. So now what it does is like what naltrexone does is with it being a medication, you take it and it in a sense blocks like the receptors in your brain when you take a drink, so it doesn't release those endorphins. And like when you drink, like, oh hey, I'm feeling pretty good and everything, I feel like, oh, I want another because I feel this makes me feel good. And so like those of us that actually have like especially alcohol abuse, we kind of get triggered, for lack of a better term, when we take that first drink. It's like it opens the floodgates for those endorphins, and it's like, oh hey, I'm feeling good, and so I have to keep drinking in order to get those keep those endorphins and that dopamine, flowing and everything. Whereas most people, they take a drink like, oh yeah, I feel pretty good, but then like after 2 or 3, they like are completely fine. People like me, like, oh hey, look, we have to keep drinking to keep getting that stimulus or whatever. So what naltrexone does is it blocks that, so you kind of like disassociate the feeling of getting that buzz or whatever from drinking and everything. So now this is something that you could use to moderate and everything. So because I know like a lot of people like with alcohol kind of being the social lubricant, and most people, oh, I need to have like a drink in hand to be able to talk and everything. So like you might in essence feel like the odd man or woman or whoever that is out of the social circles because like you're in a situation where alcohol isn't present. Now in the case of moderation, you might be someone that wants to have like 1 or 2 drinks and still be sociable and everything. Me, of course, like someone like me, I quit cold turkey, and then like kind of went down the path of AA, and of course I left after 2.5 years. And so I mean, I've made videos on like why I left, and like AA is like the worst of communities, and like you can go back and check all the videos where I go over that stuff. And so now this is covered by like most insurance plans, and it is non-habit forming. And so now it also does have a then this is stuff I'm pulling from that website of the sinclairmethod.org. It states that it has a 78% success rate. Now the number that is usually kicked around for AA success rate is 5%, but if like I did a Google search not too long ago, and the numbers that you find is like 7 to 12%. Now there is this method, there's this, or I should say, concept that is known as like spontaneous remission, where like someone like me would probably be like a good example of like spontaneous remission, where like, you know what, I've had enough of my bullshit, I've had enough of this, and I'm just done. That's like a spontaneous remission where people just all of a sudden up and quit. The number I've heard with that is roughly like 5% and everything. So now I could say, well, AA has a 5% success rate, spontaneous remission 5% success rate, so AA must have a 0% success rate. The number I came across when doing a Google search is that like they say that AA has a 7 to 12% success rate. Now you can kind of think like, okay, well, you can kind of deduce and kind of like sit there, well, wait a sec, if there's a 5% spontaneous remission, then we kind of have to subtract that 5% from the 7 to 12% success rate of AA, which it basically puts it down to 2 to 7%. And then, okay, with the, for instance, like with the spontaneous remission here with the Sinclair method, we apply that kind of thinking, that brings it down to a 73% success rate. So even if we do like a kind of like, okay, a 73% success rate versus a 7% success rate. Now, most people, like, I would assume would be like, wait a sec, I want to quit drinking and everything. Why am I going to go with a religion, and quite possibly, like as many people like map out a religious cult with AA that has a 7% success rate? Why am I going to kind of set myself up for failure, or have like a slim to no chance of success with this religious program that basically like ramrods like a God belief and like a God controlling everything down my throat, versus like a 73% success rate with what I just laid out with like spontaneous remission and stuff, like with the Sinclair method. Now I'm going to like get into like you could use like a tag team method with the Sinclair method, treating it as like a disease. Like again, like AA says it's like a spiritual disease, like a disease that only a spiritual way of life can like cure anything. And if you look at all the other diseases that are out there, you can deduce that there is no such thing as a spiritual disease. So disease, now of course I know a lot of people are going to sit there and like argue over semantics, but like we step back and like, okay, so like AA says it's a spiritual disease and has at most a 12% success rate, and here like the Sinclair method is treating it like with the medication as an actual disease and it has a 78% success rate. So we just take those two numbers, you're looking at like a 66% better chance of succeeding with putting your alcohol and or substance abuse behind you using an evidence-based approach versus a religious-based approach. So this, and of course the Sinclair method, again pulling from the website, has more than 90 clinical trials to kind of back this up and like, hey, look, here's our success rate, here's our information, and here's the pretty much the data to prove it, and all that we can like basically use to back up this method and everything to treat substance and alcohol abuse. Whereas AA, you just have to like accept it and like have that blind faith and like so. Now I'm sure most people like are like me and they're like, hey, look, this makes more sense coming from like an evidence-based approach. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go with something that I'm going to have like the most success with. It's like the same thing with the business. If you're looking at like okay, so I'm looking at marketing like widgets or something. I have this plant where I produce widgets, and I'm looking at two like marketing teams, and one marketing team says they have like a 12% success rate at like marketing widgets, and then the second one has a 78% success rate with the marketing widgets. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to go with the one that has a 78% success rate because, hey, look, you could say like a dollar for dollar. So like, now, of course, it's obviously much more complex than this, but if you were to relate it dollar for dollar, I'd be making 66% more by going with this second marketing team versus this first marketing team. So now, again, it's kind of like stretching it, but like you could kind of like, okay, well, the point is, why am I going to go with something that I'm not necessarily going to be successful with and has no evidence to back it up with, and has at most 12% success rate, whereas I can go with something like this or something else that has tons of trials, tons of evidence, and has a 78% success rate, 66% better and everything. So you kind of have to like look at things like, okay, so what's my best option in order for me to succeed? Now, whether I've mentioned like being able to moderate Okay, so instead of like moderating, instead of just cutting out cold turkey and going abstinence and everything, and now it does mention like abstinence, where like it states like with the I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but it states that AA like says that like if you were to like relapse, and of course now you have to get into the whole package of like, did you have a lapse, did you have a relapse, that like you get into this where programs like Smart Recovery talk about that. But like if you were to say like the terminology of relapse in the AA term from the AA approach, you pretty much pick up right where you left off. So like even like someone like me, if I were to go back to drinking, according to this and according to AA, I would basically be picking up right where I left off and everything. Whereas like with this, I can kind of like in a sense taper myself off, and of course that does bring up the notion of like sometimes it is dangerous to come off of stuff, even alcohol, cold turkey, because it could be deadly and everything, because especially if you're at the point where you're physically dependent on that substance and everything. So this could theoretically like help you wean you off to the point of like then once you get out of that the alcohol induced brain fog, and you're starting to after several months you're starting to think a lot clearer, and you can start making better decisions. You can start like, okay, well, I can look at my past and like, well, I don't necessarily want to moderate. I just want to go cold turkey, or at least continue on after I've kind of tapered off and everything. Or, oh, hey, look, I am one of those people that like I can use this as like a medication, and I can sit there and maybe go out like on a Friday night and have like a couple of drinks and be social and everything. So, but that's pretty much like all up to the individual and everything. So like me as an individual, I didn't go down this road with the Sinclair method. So like for someone like me, this might not necessarily be the best method for me to even get into now, like because it's been like forever since I've quit drinking and everything. So this method might not necessarily apply to me and everything. But what I'm doing by talking about this is those people that are either just starting to quit, or like they're maybe you're in AA and you're looking like, man, this is total bullshit or whatever. You're looking for things for alternatives that you can like kind of like, okay, well, let me start moving myself away from this group, because I think everything about it is total asinine. I'm now going to go this way. This could, depending on your situation, it could help you bridge the gap between leaving AA and getting onto your life without it and everything. So now I have mentioned Smart Recovery. I do have videos where I go over the chapters of the handbook. I do talk about it and everything. So that's like a behavior approach. But like for me, this video I'm talking about like the Sinclair method, which tends to bring out the approach of like treating it as like a disease. And so I'm going to end this like pretty much posting the questions like now whether or not like alcohol and substance abuse is a disease, or like it is listed as a mental disorder, and of course there are other mental disorders that can be treated by medication. So like why are we going to like continue treating like a known mental disorder that you can take a medication for with a religious approach that, like I stated, has at best a 12% success rate that I found through a Google search, versus something like the Sinclair method here that we can use that has like we can get it medicated and treat it like as like the mental disorder, or maybe quite possibly as a disease that like organizations like AA claims, and have a 78% success rate. So with me, I'd rather say, hey, I'd rather have like a 66% better chance at put my alcohol and or substance abuse behind me with this evidence-based Sinclair method versus a religious dogmatic approach from AA.